Hey guys, what's going on? GovKidMethod here, and in today's video, I'm talking about the P word, and that's profit. So I've received this type of question in numerous different ways, and let me stop the table from shaking here. Derek, how do I profit on a government contract? And at first, I didn't really understand the question. My first reaction was kind of, what do you mean? How do you profit on a government contract? How do you profit on anything? You mark it up, right? If you're in business, you're in the business of making a profit. Profit is not a dirty word, right? So it's exactly the same for government contracts. So kind of the first thing I want to touch on is talking about, how do you build a profit into your pricing, if you will, or what are some of the things you have to consider, more importantly, when you're putting your price together. So I want to touch on that. And then I will, touch on how much profit. Not sure if I'll give you guys an exact answer on that because I don't want you to use it against me, but I will at least talk generally about it. And I'm just checking my notes here. And then another way to make a profit is kind of once you get the contract, what can you do to make sure that you remain profitable? So that's what we're discussing today with all things profits. So coming back to the first item, when you're pricing out a government contract, you're putting your bid together, right? You've got maybe your proposal set up, or maybe you're doing an RFQ and you're doing something that's only a quote. You have to make sure that your price is full and complete. And the way you start with that, the way you start with pricing anything, is you start with covering your costs. So, what is the raw cost of the item? Or what is the raw cost of the person that you're employing? How much are you going to have to pay them? The labor hours. It's a little bit difficult to talk specifically about this because there's so many different industries, but what is the true raw unmarked up cost? That's really the first thing that you have to start off with, right? Like if you're trying to get to $30 and the thing costs $15 just to buy it, well, you have some stuff in between there, and then your markup's going to have to be included in that. If you're trying not to exceed $30, for example, $15 is eaten up right away by this cost. Cost of material is another term that may or may not be relevant depending on, what industry you are in. But you have to start with this cost. Then after that, you have to, essentially build in your company's cost, right? So sometimes folks skip this step and they go, okay, this is how much it costs. And then I'm gonna mark it up. I'm gonna put my profit on it, and then I'm done. So that's kind of why I wanted to spell this out. Your company costs may include overhead, G&A, general administrative costs, or you may have other types of costs that are related to your company to perform, to manage, to deliver. If you're trying to operate very lean, companies sometimes will be very, very small in the percentage for this type of cost. But you have to consider what your company cost is as your contracts grow and they become more sizable or scalable. This cost will be considerable. Okay, another thing that you want to consider is like taxes. What I'm going to talk about is more specifically about like a company's payroll tax. So if you have employees that are working, you have to cover, Social Security, FICA, FUTA, SUTA, Social Security, Medicare. These are all shared payroll costs that typically an employee pays into 50%, an employer pays into 50%. Every state is kind of different in the percentages and all of that. But if you're pricing a contract that has employees that you have to pay, and you're only accounting for the hours that you're going to be paying them, and you're putting a markup, on top of that for your profit, you're done. You're screwed. You messed up. You have to account for all these employer payroll costs. Again, we're just talking about cost. So you need to consider that. Like, that's another huge thing as it relates to company cost and taxes in that regard. And then, I touched on overhead and then G&A. These are the costs that you keep the lights on in your building, or to pay the overhead, human resource person that will be spending 2% of their time on this contract, and their time is divvied out on a bunch of other contracts. So this contract gets a little slice of it, this contract gets a little bit slice. That is built into your company overhead or G&A. Some companies charge both, and they create a rule where certain costs are overhead related and certain costs are G&A related. Other companies will choose overhead or G&A, and that's kind of the more accepted rule as far as DCAA is concerned, from what I've seen. The Defense Contract Auditing Agency, they're kind of the ones who can come and audit you after you win a contract. And they really want to see the rhyme and reason of how you are tracking your accounting, how you're doing your numbers. That's the number one most important thing that they're concerned with, DCAA, is that you're being consistent and you have some logical, procedures and SOPs that you're following. If you get audited, that's kind of what they're going to be asking you and what they're going to lean on when it comes to your pricing. So after all of that, then you can put a profit. And then, you can't put a profit on like taxes. Like, you can't take a number and then make it bigger by adding payroll taxes, and then make it bigger by adding your, employer costs, and then make it bigger by putting your profit. You can't make profit on taxes and things like that. You typically will profit off of the raw cost, that first number you would apply your profit to. And some people kind of build in profit for like their overhead and their G&A. They will bump up their numbers a little bit. So that's kind of sometimes how they deal with that. But you cannot make profit off of taxes or things like that is not work directly related to the work being performed on the contract. That's what you're making profit on, because profit is not a dirty word. You have to make a profit to stay alive and be in business. The government wants you to be profitable. You just have to make sure that you cover all your costs appropriately first, and then do what's considered a fair and reasonable amount of profit. And that will also be determined by the marketplace. So I'm going to kind of get into the next point here, turn my notes back on. How much profit? Well, first off, whether you win a contract or not is largely dictated on where do you fall against your competition. So sometimes people will say, Derek, how much profit can I charge? You can charge whatever you want. It doesn't mean the government has to agree to it. And it doesn't mean that you will be more competitive than your competitors that have been doing this for a while. So go ahead, charge what you want. If you get crazy with it, you're just not going to win, and it's going to be a moot point, and it's not going to matter. So instead, a more interesting question and a more interesting way to look at it is, how much should I charge? Okay, well, that opens up a kind of a whole new different set of questions and things to entertain, including, what is your competition doing? It's one of the reasons why I recommend you get started bidding and getting those, proposal debriefs, getting the feedback on your responses, and then seeing where you shake out amongst your competition pricing wise. So you can see, are you coming in low? Are you right where you should be? Are you high? This is like positive feedback that you get once you start getting intimately involved with bidding, because every industry is different. And, I can't give you a rate for construction and have it be the same type of rate for IT. It's just every industry is different. So until you start playing in the industry, there's no point of even asking the question, because it's not going to be very relevant to you, because you're not going to be able to apply that to the feedback that you get and use it in a meaningful and productive way to enhance your pricing strategy. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit. People always want me to give them a number. Give me a range, 8 to 15%. Okay, there's your range. Don't use it against me. For certain industries, that's going to be way high. For certain industries, that may be probably not low. It might be a little bit low for certain industries, but 8 to 15% rather is kind of a range that hasn't gotten me in trouble. And I call that the competitive range. So we're not talking about like sole sourcing. Sole sourcing can have higher percentage ranges. And I don't know, I may get flack for even putting that out there. People may disagree with me. Whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to help you guys. Like, you got to get started somewhere. So again, there's a huge grain of salt with that range, but you got to know your industry. You got to see what's competitive for the space, and you just got to get started. And then you may find out your first bid was high or low. Okay, we'll adjust accordingly. Maybe you're not bidding stuff like exactly the way, like quoting the statement of works appropriately or fully. Maybe you're missing some things. So make sure you're quoting the jobs in full, or if you're working with a subcontractor getting pricing, make sure that they are quoting in full as well, so that when you are putting that profit on there, everything is covered, your total cost is covered, and your profit is on that real number. So now there's kind of, I hope that that's helping a little bit. And how do I make a profit? I mean, I don't know how to break it down any more than this. I mean, if you're asking how to make a profit, I mean, a kid who owns a lemonade stand, who's 5 years old, knows how to make a profit, right? Like, so you know how to make a profit. So you have to start asking the better questions of like, what should I include in my markups, or what costs do I need to cover? How much profit is too much? I talked about how much should I charge the government. So those are some of the things that we just, essentially walked through, answering those that maybe will get you closer to your answer, closer to something that's going to help you in your bidding. So now there was one more thing I wanted to add that affects profit is once you win a contract. So once you win a contract, how you manage it very much dictates if you remain profitable and you actually get to keep that profit, or if you lose the profit, or maybe you can become even more profitable. So just because you win an award, the government does not give you the money up front. We're talking, monthly invoices, net 30, or we're talking progress payments. You have to be able to float that up front. The government is not just saying, okay, here's the chunk of change. It's instead a reimbursement type model. So that means your profit is not truly gained until the contract is over. There could be problems. You could be assessed late fees. You think that's going to affect your profit margin? It absolutely will. What about if you finish a project ahead of schedule and the government was paying you a firm fixed price, which means they're giving you one number and don't come back to us to ask for anything. Here's your one number. Get it done. And if you get it done, sooner, or with fewer resources or something without sacrificing the quality, then good for you. That's extra profit, right? Because you're still getting that number and now you're spending less on your costs. So the amount of money left over is more for you, for your business. So that's one way that if you can competitively bid and win and then work even more efficiently, you can become more profitable. And likewise, on the flip side, if you manage a project poorly, you have a poor project manager. I've seen this multiple times where, say you have a remote, job, in another state, could be construction or something like that, and you put a site superintendent or a project manager on the site. Hey, this is their job. Their job is supposed to be getting the job done on time and under budget. But to them, it's personal. To them, it means not having a job possibly when this contract is over. So what these people will do is they'll milk it and they will make things go as long as possible so they keep getting paid, which is good for them. It's bad for business. So you really need to be on top of your supers and your PMs on projects, especially if they're remote and you're not able to check in on them and go to the site yourself and see what's really going on. They'll give you excuses about delays. They'll just say all this load of crap just to, again, milk the project, which is sucking out all the profit. So when you look at the pool of hours and, you sit down with the accountants and you're like, where did the money go? At the end of the project, we had 10% built in for this, and now we're negative. Well, those are the sorts of things that are going to really come out in the woodwork. So once you have a project, managing it efficiently, even what you can do is you can give a bonus instead to that PM or that site super to finish early. So now you're monetarily incentivizing them. Hey, it's going to cost you a little bit more than what you quoted, or maybe, you even build that in knowing you're going to do that as an incentive. But at least they're not going to milk the project because you're incentivizing them in a different direction to get the project done the way that you want them to, instead of them being, fearful for losing their jobs. So those are kind of 3 points I wanted to talk about in regards to profit. How do I make a profit? Again, it's a basic question, and so I know it really is getting at something more specific, more meaningful. So I tried to address that in this video. Probably didn't cover everything, but I didn't want to make this any longer at this point. And hey, don't come back at me and giving me flack about that range of 8 to 15%. I'm telling you up front, it's different for every industry. I'm here trying to help you guys. If you need somewhere to get started, consider that range, but that range probably will change for you. You just got to get started with something. So use that with some common sense, and hopefully that will help you. So, hey, if you like GovCon videos, that's all I do. So consider subscribing. If you're one of those people that are watching my videos over and over again, but you haven't subscribed yet, I have a lot. Consider actually hitting that subscribe button because it helps me a lot. I'm not showing up in the rankings as people are saying that I should, because they're telling me I should be on top. I should be number one. So if you want to help me get on top ahead of some of these other videos, liking this video and subscribing to my channel would help me. It's something that you can do that only takes a second, doesn't cost any money, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any, recommendations for next video, leave those in the comments section of this video. I do check those, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys.